give a big round of welcome to Claire.
Hello, everyone.
So Claire was the Chief Operating Officer of Stripe from 2014 to 2021, when Stripe went from 160 employees to 7,000 team members, and continues to be very involved at Stripe. Is a corporate officer, spends time with the founders, and then before Stripe, was at Google for 11 years, where she led business teams across just about every single product, AdWords, Google Apps, Gmail, etc. And then in that period, Google went from 2,000 team members to 60,000 team members. Now, apart from actually spending time at Stripe, Claire's on 6 boards, including 3 public boards. Some of the ones you'd recognize would be HubSpot, Aurora Innovation, The Atlantic, and so on. So it's a great pleasure to have you here, Claire. Claire, let's start with your personal journey. You studied English literature at Brown, and then you ran political campaigns in Massachusetts. You tried to get into law school, or
I did get in.
You get into law school.
I just didn't go.
You just didn't go. And then, voila, you end up like running all these like big teams at big tech companies.
Yeah, it's weird.
So, tell us a little bit about like what happened there.
I mean, I think it's the more interesting thing for all of you would be, how do I find an operator that is the right fit for the stage of company?
Absolutely, yeah.
I care a lot about impact. But yeah, then I did this. I went to business school. I worked in consulting at kind of a startup consulting firm that had a very big tech arm, which is where I started to get educated.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And this was the beginning of bring data to your customer insights, that era. Data warehouses, data marts. Some of this may sound, that sounds like I'm 100 years old. Anyway, but we did a lot of customer data projects, which helped because I had a lot of marketing customer orientation, but I kind of like scale and the analytical. And then quit that and moved to the West Coast, another risk, right after the dot-com sort of bust. But I somehow was like, oh, this looks like where innovation is happening, and got the job at Google. But I think that what my career demonstrated that I would look for if I were you is people who have gotten some traditional training and shown trajectory in reasonable places, but then also, for example, my consulting firm, I was promoted, I was running projects, whatever, but then show an appetite for sort of adaptability, risk-taking, handling ambiguity.
Let's talk about Stripe. What did you see in the founders? And then talk to us a little bit about the early days of working with them, and how did they make you, what did you see in them, and then how did they make you successful?
They definitely did, and still do. I talk to them still. So I think that the hardest thing is you need to run the company in a certain way to get product market fit that is really different. That's very product oriented, and you're the only salesperson, and you know all this. But then all of a sudden, kind of overnight, you have to switch from continuing to be paranoid about your product advancing, but then building a company, which is actually quite a different skill set. And that is a struggle. And I see so many people go through it. And Patrick and John were going through that. And what was happening at Stripe when I joined was they actually took, everyone sort of thinks these things are overnight successes. They had been wandering, not quite in the wilderness, but seeking traction for 3 or 4 years. They were really trying to they had an insight that was, I think, accurate about payments infrastructure and APIs, but they weren't getting the distribution, and they didn't quite have the product nailed. And so that was maybe they hovered between, for a while around sub 10 people, then around 30 people for a while. And then all of a sudden they'd hit it, and they were sort of not recognizing it, being a little paranoid. Like, well, what if it's not real, or what if, and they didn't have a big board. They had a couple of investors, and they were suddenly like, hey, you need to build go-to-market. And when I joined Stripe, there was 1 marketing person for product launches and 2 inside salespeople and 1 account manager. And that's it. That was go-to-market. It was so they were getting pressure, like you got to start to build your go-to-market, and then also having some organizational challenges. All of a sudden, it's like 150 people. not everybody knows what everybody's doing. They didn't really have a company goal structure. I'll be honest, the only surprise, because I spent so much time with the founders when I joined Stripe, was like management was a new concept. Not everybody, when I met them when I first joined, knew who their manager was.
All right, there you go.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, this is an opportunity for me to add something.
Did they have managers, actually?
Technically, they did. I mean, there really wasn't an HR system. But I think that the thing that happened in the process talking to John and Patrick that really, well, one, the company traction was more obvious to me looking at the numbers sometimes, I think, to them. And I did talk to some investors, which was very helpful. Don't forget, your investors can help you with their networks, but also to help you assess and sell candidates. But the other was John and Patrick both took time to really get to know me and what my background was. I had an experience at the time I was getting recruited. I mean, I have to tell you.
How much time did they spend with you? Like,
Oh.
just give us some sense. How many meetings? Because I think this is pretty important, right? I think a bunch of our founders try
this
to
is
hire
probably
fast.
unusual. But Patrick told a Bloomberg reporter that we spent 50 hours together. I'm not sure that's
50 hours before
50.
before they.
Yeah, but we were really feeling each other out. I wouldn't say it was 50 hours, but it was a lot. So much so that I helped them write the company goals before I joined the company. Stripe did work trials actually pretty successfully for some early engineers. I mean, we didn't call it that then, but it was basically. They took some of our most active engineering users and we're like, hey, would you like to, who are commenting in chats and giving feedback? They're like, your feedback's really good. Why don't you join us, right? But I think there's a business hire that Stripe made, the head of BD and partnerships, who actually was a good CFO stand-in, Billy Alvarado. He did the deal with Wells Fargo for Stripe before he officially joined. Like, they just were like,
amazing, actually.
let me just suck in these resources and just bring them along to some meetings.
And what was the thing eventually? So you spent 50 hours. Of course, maybe second part of that, they're just trying to sell you, right?
Yes,
I mean,
the first half was sort
What
of.
was the clincher? Like, when did you say, okay, I'm going to go do this. I'm going to leave this big job at Google. I'm going to join this tiny company called Stripe.
So I had a big hesitation around, frankly, fintech and payments. And so I said to the guys, I'm like, this is not my area. Like, I am not a wizard on this stuff. I do care a lot about infrastructure. I cared a lot about the vision, but the actual product we had in the market at the time, I was like, this is not going to be my sweet spot. So I had a lot of hesitation. The clincher was, I got in the car. I'd been with them for a couple hours up in SF. I was driving home, and I realized, okay, these founders are people I would bet on. Because basically, anyone you're hiring, especially at a senior level, it's like making an investment. But anyway, point is, the founders, their vision, and them as humans, and their curiosity and their capacity to learn and sort of expand. And Stripe actually had that potential. And I was kind of spoiled. I was like, I want big impact, big range, right? So that, and then could I personally learn? Was I going to get new opportunities, which obviously the role was? And then did I think they needed me? Like, did I see a chance to jump in and just start to do what I could do well? And I started to meet the team and see, okay, there are people here who I could work with. And the culture felt, I was like, I can see myself working with this team and making it better. But it took some time for us to get there.
That's a great story. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. All right, let's do a quick rapid fire, and then we're going to open it up. So I'm going to ask you a question, and then just have you respond rapid fire.
Quick,
okay?
Quick.
A founder tells you, we're 30 people, we don't need goal setting yet. What do you say back? And when is the right time?
Do you have product market fit?
Okay, good one. That's right. That's what we say too. If you don't have product market fit, do not
just survive.
Your only goal.
That's your only goal.
Product market fit. Keep the team small. Keep iterating. Don't run out of money.
Yeah, you got to get rid of your existential threat.
Right.
Before you start running the
Love
company.
It. But once you have product market fit, then say more.
My analogy for this, I'll be quick, is if any of you, I know it's hard while you're running a company to find time to exercise, but I do really recommend it because I do think sound mind, sound body is real, okay? But why do we exercise? We go not because one time exercising helps our body. It's actually the repetition and the learning and the training of the muscles, okay? And the training of the cardio system. Doing some company operating stuff, even if it's very lightweight, which it should be when you're small, is training the muscle that you are going to need. I've had a bunch of founders say to me, shit, I should have put that stuff in earlier because now the org is rejecting structure.
That's right.
Talked to some growth stage startups that didn't start building the structures and then couldn't get them implemented.
By the way, our best performing, I'd say 80% of our best performing search companies, our seed platform, they have OKRs. Google
Yeah,
has
it should be
OKRs.
very
Yeah,
simple.
very simplified OKRs.
Just get used to it.
All right, let's go to the second one. You wake up one morning and realize you're in every decision loop. What do you do first?
You got to ask yourself why. And this is, I think founders struggle with this. The problem might be you. You might be insisting on being on every decision loop, but you don't have to be. Okay, so if the answer is no, I don't have to be, somehow I am, well then what happened there? Do you have no talent? Are you not delegating? Are you, like, you have to do a sort of 5 whys exercise. Keep asking yourself, why is this happening, until you feel like you have and ask people you trust, why do you think this is happening? There may be some feedback for you that you need to change your behavior. I think that's 50%.
How would a founder figure that out? Like, what's a tip? Because, founders in general, they all micromanage everything.
I think that there's a very common phenomenon of fear in companies, especially young companies, of making a decision without the founder. And I think the founders actually like it because they're paranoid. They want to make all the best decisions, and they think every decision is very important, which a lot of them are when you're early. And what is a tip to know that you're doing that? Well, one, that you're in every decision loop, but two, that you say to people, why are you coming to me? It's actually kind of a major problem eventually, right? You just can't operate that way.
Cool. All right, let's keep going. So you shared this incredible story about how they recruited you. 50 hours of time. What's the most underrated thing founders get wrong about recruiting? Is it just speed? They just try to hire too quickly? You work with so many companies now.
I think that there's a lot of good practices that I see founders like trying. There's this tricky thing where you can back channel in a way that's too aggressive and kind of undermines trust with the candidate. I think the thing that founders underestimate, here's what they get wrong. Senior people, the more senior you're hiring, are very good at interviewing. This is obvious, but you can get easily impressed because you've been interviewing non-experienced people, and then all of a sudden you meet someone like this guy, and you're like, whoa, he hung the moon. Listen to him. He's so smart and polished. And does he actually do the work? That is, I think, the biggest mistake, is you got to actually dig deeper because we're very good at presenting ourselves.
And I guess that's why it takes 50 hours, right? Because they're really trying to...
Well, I think
really
50, by the way, I wouldn't use that as a benchmark, but at least 10.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Have a dinner with them. I had multiple dinners. One of the things I'll say that John and Patrick and also Billy, who was the early leader in the company, was like a Venn diagram of our complementary skills, which even John and Patrick have that, but then we have an overlap, which is really what I would call values. But like, when the chips are down, will we come to an alignment quickly on what the right thing to do is? And that's hard to get at without spending some social time.
Yeah. All right, last question. You hire a senior executives, 3 months go by, it's not working
Move
out.
very quickly.
Okay, so say a lot.
I talk to so many founders every week, and I would say the top 2 topics are like, how do I build and run my leadership team? How do I deal with the fact that I think I have a leader who's bad? And if you have an intuition, this is hard because you don't have a lot of pattern match, most of you. If you're having a concern, you are probably right. Most of my time in that call is listening to them explain why they're concerned and me validating it and saying, yeah, it sounds like a problem. Have you talked to the person about this? You got to get in there and address it. But I cannot underscore enough, the more senior the person is, the bigger the blast radius of negative impact on your company. People are watching. They're watching this person have power and authority, and even if you're small, and they're thinking, this person is not good. And it's really can be a sickness in the culture. So I think you can't move fast enough to start to confront it. Now, if there's a chance they were not getting the culture, they may be able to pivot, but you got to, no one ever regretted moving more quickly.
How much time would you give? You don't want to move in 2 weeks, right? Saying, oh gosh, nothing's happened.
I think it really depends on how they react to that feedback. If they're reacting very badly to it, it might be 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Yeah.
So you
Well,
pick-
you've spent 3 months studying.
Right.
You've said, where's your data? What are you working on?
No, I mean 2 weeks from the time you hire them.
Oh, 2 weeks is too short.
That's too short. Right?
No, they need probably at least a month to figure out what's going on.
To figure out what's going on and then start delivering.
Depending on how big you are, right? But let's say you're sub 50 people. Well, they need at least a month to figure out what's going on. So I think it's probably 6 to 8 weeks in. You're like, And one of the signals that I noticed when Stripe hired senior people of failure, impending failure, if you're scaling, you got to be hiring. Yes. Does this person identify the top role they need to fill, and do they fill it effectively within 2 months? Okay? And probably not 1 month, but 2 months is a reasonable, and if they have not hired anyone, and you know they have to scale, and they haven't brought in a high-quality person, something is probably wrong. Either they don't believe in what you're building, they're not bringing people, because if you're a good leader, you have followership, right? What's some of the best stuff I did for Stripe? I brought in people who I knew were really good.
All right, cool.
Anyway.
Let's open it up. Let's maybe take 2 or 3 questions. Yeah, go ahead, Hanson.
Thanks for sharing. I think you just mentioned 2 things you discussed with the founder a lot. The second one is what you just shared. Can you share a bit more about the first one, how to build a leadership around you?
How to build a
How
leadership.
to build a leadership team.
Yeah, so the main thrust of my book, Patrick and John made me write this book, Scaling People. It came out a couple years ago. And so that, in the book, I explain in the beginning that my theory of team building in organizations is a little bit opposite to what you hear from a lot of people. Most people say, oh, it's all about the people, the teams you build. It starts with you. So in order to build an effective leadership team, you have to build self-awareness. This is what I mean by you got to take a look at yourself when you're having a problem, because often it starts with you, and if you're not aware that you have this great strength, by the way, you all must, because you're looking pretty successful right now, though you have a lot to prove probably. We all have blind spots, and they're blind, so we don't know them, but you have these weaknesses that you need complementary people around you. But if you can't know that of yourself, that's why the Working with Claire doc got kind of viral, not because I think everyone has to write one, though I think it's a good exercise, but in order to write what is it like to work with me?
So you have a doc that says what's it like to work with you?
Yes. It's in my book, but it's on the web. Elad published it at one point. But why is it's a useful exercise because you have to know how do I make decisions? How do I prefer people communicate with me? What happens when I'm under stress? How do I want someone to tell me something went wrong? Like, these are things that you should know about yourself. And why do you need to know them? Because eventually you have to build a team that is not just a bunch of individual contributors, but a team that is complementary mostly to you, right? This is the other thing that's hard, which is sometimes the higher you're looking for that values overlap, but you're also looking for that complementary skill set. Some of my best hires, my interviews with them were difficult for me because the way they thought about problems, it's like totally different, right? You'd give them a scenario in an interview and they'd say, wow, I would blah, blah, and I'm like, I would never do that. But if they're really accomplished and they're really smart, and you're like, oh my gosh, this person is gonna bring to my table a completely different mindset, and we're gonna face a hard problem together, and they're gonna say, hey, wait a minute, boss, I think you're moving too quickly to the left, and I see much more opportunity to the right. Like, those are my best hires, but it's kind of hard to do that if you can't rise above, our natural connection, and we're so much alike. Like, you don't want that. When Patrick and John, and so I met them in the capacity of, is it sales, is it COO? But as we were talking about go-to-market, I kept bringing up company building stuff. I was like, have you guys started this? Or what do you think about, what's the mission of Stripe, by the way? And they didn't have one. And I was like, it's time to put it on paper. And they came back to me eventually and they said, you made us see that there was a whole dimension of work that we were not doing in the company, and for that reason, we want you to join us. Does that, I had caused them to think about things they had not thought about, and that is a sign that you have someone you probably need at your table.
So I want to ask about what happens after you find that star hire that you're so thankful for. We have a lot of really strong folks on our team. And when you have that range and you have that competence, then they are also, well suited to be successful founders on their own. So I'm curious of, from your perspective, both as someone who has sought out these operators, but then also are trying to retain star hires that you brought on, how do you continue to convince them that, you know, their biggest opportunity is still with your team? And assuming that you know truly believe it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's still, you know.
I mean, I would say that the art in that has, let's say, two components. So one is, don't forget to periodically stand up in front of whatever size company you have and remind them. I think the best founders can go up at a macro level and make an observation about, this is where the market is going, this is where tech is going, this is where we're positioned, and this is the kind of mission and impact we could have. And even your star hires, because they're in it all day, need to be occasionally, this is the point of not like every all hands meeting, but a couple times a year, a company should have a, let's get in the big picture and see what we've accomplished and talk about why we exist and motivate people, frankly. Tell some stories about your users and the impact and all that. That stuff is valuable even for the stars, because they need to be reminded they're doing something important. The second component is their individual experience. And the most talented people want to be challenged, right? I mean, you all want to be challenged. And you're watching these folks, and you got to be feeding them at the right rate, the right amount of challenge and increasing responsibility and scope. If you feed it too fast, they might start drowning, and then they start to sort of stress out and burn out. But if you feed it too slow, they get bored and they start looking around. And so this is where management skills, this is really what my book is about, are like real, because you got to be noticing. And I think the tendency is to take all your management skills, which you have very little bandwidth for, and spend them on the problems, okay? Get rid of the problems and spend those management skills on those top talent and making sure they're doing, and you say to them, what kinds of things do you want to be doing in the next year that would be really exciting to you at this company? Ask them that question. And they will tell you, and then you don't have to deliver it the next week. But within a year, you should be like, you know how you said you wanted to work on a new product? Here you go. And they feel seen. And that's what they want, challenged and seen in a thing that's important.
All right, cool. Last question.
Yeah, hi. You talked about whenever you hire like a senior person, like say 10 years, 15 years, 20 years experience in the company, they know what to say in the interviews, right? How do you actually figure out that if that person joins the company, post that he or she will be able to deliver what you actually want?
I would say that, one, we talked about try to get your hands on actual work product, people who have actually worked with the person. Like, talk to them, say to, not just someone who's your reference, but like, can you just give me 2 team members that worked for you and let me call them, right? Ask them for references that are weird. Okay, that's 1. 2, when you're having a conversation with them and they say, we blah, 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 and they describe some exciting strategic thing they did, you say to them, and what exactly did you do? And you keep needling them until they are using like, well, then I wrote the draft, or there's certain people where it comes out, they're not the ones who had the idea. Or they're not the one who, it was actually the boss's idea to do the project. And they executed it. But you're like, sort of like, so you're representing a lot of people's collective success. Now, you don't want them to be too egotistical. You want them to use we sometimes, but you want them to be able to get very specific about, well, I had this insight, and I went. And then the other thing is, I find it's a very effective question, any interview, but even senior people, tell me about a failure, and like, tell me the story. And people will either, 1, not describe a failure to you, which is a classic interviewing tactic, and that is bogus. Like, if you've had a 20-year career, you've had some mistakes, you've had some failures, and if they won't talk about it, are you going to be able to have open, honest conversations about them? It's going to be hard. 2, when they describe the failure, they either blame other people or the system or the macro environment, or they take a ton of responsibility. And the minute you have someone who's like, well, it was a terrible scope, or, well, there was this big market thing that happened and we all got screwed, I'm like, I don't care. What could you have done differently? So then you follow up and you say to them, okay, so this external thing happened, but tell me what you learned. And they have someone who's really good has thought deeply about what they learned. And if they can't, they're like, well, I learned to never be on a team like that again. What? No, like, what did you actually learn, right? Like, I think that that combination of honesty, self-reflection, and learning aptitude and ability to sort of grow, that's where talent comes from. Not someone who, presents really well in front of the room. But you got to dig. You got to keep going. And I think it's easy to get intimidated and not dig. And you want to very pleasantly dig.
So thank you for joining us, Claire.
No.
Let's give her a big round of applause.
Thank you all. And you're all doing the real work. So congratulations.